The hallway smelled like bleach and burnt cheese from the cafeteria. Students buzzed around in tight knots of gossip and giggles, lockers slamming in rapid bursts like a chain of firecrackers. Tyrese Miller moved quietly, pushing a squeaky-wheeled cart filled with old textbooks and torn folders, rescued from the school dumpster for classroom reuse. He kept his head down, hoodie half drawn over his braided hair, eyes fixed on the wheels wobbling beneath the load. "Hey! Garbage boy's back at it again!" The voice cut through the hallway. Kenny Stafford, the quarterback with a $1,000 smile and an ego to match, leaned against his locker, surrounded by his pack of friends. His voice echoed like a dare. Laughter exploded. A few students stopped walking just to watch the show. Tyrese didn't flinch. Not anymore. Another boy chimed in. "He probably reads the trash before recycling it. That's why he's so smart, right?" Tyrese gripped the cart handle a little tighter, pushing forward. It wasn't anger that burned in his chest. It was numbness. He'd long run out of tears for these moments. He reached his locker, parked the cart beside it, and started to spin the dial. The crowd began to lose interest until a voice from behind sliced through the noise with a different weight. "Tyrese," said Mrs. Rollins, her soft voice sharp with urgency. "Can I speak with you for a second?" He turned. She was holding a clipboard, her glasses pushed to the tip of her nose. She glanced over her shoulder as if making sure no one else could hear. "In my 21 years of teaching, I've never seen a score like this. Not at Eastbridge, not anywhere." She handed him a paper. "That mock national test we did last week. You scored in the 99.9 percentiles. Top score, not just in the school, statewide." Tyrese stared at the paper, blinking once, twice. "You're not joking?" "I don't joke about brilliance." The hallway wasn't silent, but suddenly it felt that way. Kenny's gang kept laughing about something behind them. Someone bumped into Tyrese's cart and muttered a half-hearted sorry without stopping. No one clapped. No one congratulated him. Just more snickers from kids who didn't hear or didn't care. Mrs. Rollins patted his arm gently. "We need to talk more, okay? After school. This could change everything." He nodded slowly, paper clenched tightly in his hand. For the first time in a long time, his heart stirred. Not with fear, with the smallest flicker of hope. But even hope felt dangerous in a place like this. The Miller apartment sat above a shuttered laundromat on Carter Street, its windows fogged with condensation from a leaky kettle and busted heater. The two-bedroom space was a puzzle of duct-taped furniture and flickering lights, with the sound of city sirens slicing through paper-thin walls. Tyrese slept on a couch bed, surrounded by stacks of second-hand textbooks and scribbled notes taped to the peeling paint. His father, Malcolm, had once owned a small auto garage on the east side. Back when Tyrese was in elementary school, customers would drop by just to hear Malcolm's jokes while he worked. But then came the recession, unpaid taxes, and a landlord who doubled the rent. The business folded, the house was lost. And pride, well, it took its own kind of foreclosure. Now Malcolm cleaned the same high school his son attended. He scrubbed urine from bathroom tiles, collected lunch trays, and changed light bulbs that barely lasted. He wore a grey jumpsuit that never quite fit, and always carried an old radio in his back pocket. Still, he rose at dawn. Still, he kept his chin up. "Don't let anyone tell you you're less than them," he told Tyrese, over microwaved noodles. "The only thing that separates kings from janitors is opportunity. You get yours, then you give someone else theirs." Tyrese listened, always listened. At night, when the electricity went out again, he dragged a chair to the parking lot, flipped open his cracked laptop, bought with 5 months of weekend recycling money, and studied under a buzzing street lamp. People stared. One drunk even mocked him for doing Harvard homework in a dumpster lot. Tyrese didn't flinch. His dreams were complicated things. He wanted MIT, robotics engineering, solar energy design. He wanted to build things that mattered, but there were no scholarship brochures mailed to their address. No counselor pushing his name. No one but Mrs. Rollins, who even seemed to care. She was a storm of greying curls and floral dresses, known for calling out lazy teachers in the staff room. She taught literature, but it was her after-school sessions that kept Tyrese afloat. She saw the way he dissected systems, the way he translated Shakespeare like he'd lived the sonnets. "This school doesn't deserve you," she whispered once after class. "But that doesn't mean you won't rise anyway." Tyrese didn't reply. He just smiled faintly. He'd heard too many promises fall flat. Then there was Kenny Stafford, golden boy, quarterback, son of City Councilman Harold Stafford. His name was already printed in the school's alumni newsletter under most likely to attend Yale. His family donated enough to keep the school's lights on. Teachers gave him leeway, students gave him praise. And Kenny? He gave Tyrese hell, locker slams, shoved trays, mocked clothes, garbage boy. But it wasn't just cruelty, there was something else, jealousy. Kenny saw the way Mrs. Rollins lit up when Tyrese entered class. He saw the scribbled equations on Tyrese's folders, the mock test scores that quietly landed at the top. Kenny was used to being the best by default. Tyrese was proof that effort beat entitlement. Then came the announcement during a droning Monday morning assembly. Principal Hayes stepped to the mic, sweat bleeding through his shirt collar. Attention, students. This year, Eastbridge High is eligible to nominate one student for the National Scholar Final, an opportunity for full university funding and national recognition. The auditorium buzzed with low murmurs. One student, the principal repeated. And after consultation with the board, we are proud to pre-nominate Kenneth Stafford. Applause thundered. Teachers clapped. Kenny stood, smirked, and did a fake, humble nod, like he'd just won an Oscar. But Tyrese didn't move. He sat still, heart pounding in his chest, teeth locked. Mrs. Rollins didn't clap either. That afternoon, she stormed into the principal's office, clipboard in hand, fire in her voice. Did you even look at the test scores? Did you see Tyrese's percentile? Hayes shifted uncomfortably. We considered overall performance, community representation. No, you considered who had a father on the city board, she shot back. Tyrese, waiting outside the office, heard it all. He didn't feel angry, not yet, just tired, like his effort existed in a vacuum, never loud enough to be noticed unless someone like Mrs. Rollins forced the volume up. Later that night, over dishes and silence, he looked at his father. They already chose someone else, he said, voice low. Malcolm paused, drying a plate. So? Tyrese looked confused. You gonna let one no stop you? Malcolm asked, meeting his son's eyes. Or you gonna show them why they were wrong? Tyrese didn't answer. Not yet. But in his chest, something finally started to burn. Not numbness this time, resolve. It was nearly midnight when Tyrese sat in the dim glow of his laptop screen, the muffled sounds of the city murmuring through the cracked window. His father had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from back-to-back shifts. The apartment was still, except for the gentle hum of the laptop fan and the soft tapping of Tyrese's fingers. He wasn't supposed to be taking the test. The National Scholar Qualifying Exam was only for school-nominated candidates. But through an old student forum, Tyrese had found a way to register independently. No bells, no ceremony, just a timed test. One shot. His palms were slick with sweat as the digital clock ticked down. He barely noticed the ache in his back or the hunger gnawing at his stomach. His focus was surgical. Calculus problems, logical reasoning, experimental writing prompts, each answered with sharp precision. When the screen went dark for a moment before calculating results, his heart thudded so hard he thought it might wake the whole block. Then the result appeared. Top percentile, highest score in the state. Tyrese stared at it for a long moment, not blinking. He didn't cheer, didn't jump. He just leaned back, the breath catching in his throat like a sob he refused to release. He took a screenshot, saved the confirmation, then closed the laptop, slowly, gently, like it was something sacred. But he didn't tell anyone, not even Mrs. Rollins, not yet. The next morning, the school buzzed with activity. Posters of Kenny smiling in a blazer were taped on every bulletin board. Our national scholar candidate. Students laughed in the halls, congratulated him like it was already over. Tyrese kept his head down, but his eyes were sharp. He caught Kenny smirking at him once from across the cafeteria, the kind of grin that dared Tyrese to speak up. He didn't. Later that week, Mrs. Rollins marched into Principal Delgado's office with fire in her voice and the state score report in hand. This student scored the highest in the state, she said, her finger tapping the printed name, Tyrese Miller. You cannot ignore this. Delgado didn't even look up right away. The selection's already been made. No, she said firmly. A decision was announced, but not based on merit. This boy, this young man, is your top performer, and you're choosing optics over excellence. Delgado leaned back in his chair, eyes cold. This isn't about merit, Rollins. This is about politics. Kenny's father sits on the board. He donates to the city's education grants. He's been pushing this campaign for years. I'm not blowing it up over a janitor's kid who got lucky on a test. He didn't get lucky, her voice cracked with rage. He earned it. Delgado's jaw tightened. He stood, voice lowering. No one wants a janitor's son to be the face of our school. Not the donors, not the press, and not the board. End of story. Outside, Tyrese stood frozen near the office door, having heard every word. His mouth was dry. His fingers trembled around the straps of his backpack. For a second, he thought about barging in, yelling the truth, throwing the test results across the desk. But instead, he walked away. That night, he got home and didn't eat, didn't talk. He sat in his room surrounded by dreams. The MIT posters, the robotics articles, the quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson he had scribbled above his window. He tore it all down. Every page, every goal, every dream pinned to the wall, ripped into shreds. The paper made no sound as it hit the floor. Malcolm came in, saw the mess, and frowned. What happened? Tyrese didn't look up. They're never gonna pick me. I'm the garbage boy, remember? Malcolm stepped forward, voice firm. Don't say that. That's what they call you. Doesn't mean it's true. Tyrese looked at him, finally. Yeah? Then why did the principal say no one wants a janitor's son representing the school? Malcolm stood still, jaw clenched, pain flickering in his eyes. But he didn't say anything. Tyrese turned away. Maybe they're right. The silence that followed was heavy. Years of struggle packed into one quiet, defeated moment. The next morning, Mrs. Rollins sat at her desk long before the first bell rang. The classroom was dim, sun barely cutting through the dusty blinds. Her hands trembled slightly as she composed the email. She knew it could cost her job, knew the board would retaliate if they found out, but she didn't care anymore. She attached Tyrese's test documentation, the official screenshots, the timestamps, and a short, fiercely written letter. She sent it directly to the National Scholar Council's outreach email. You've missed someone, not because of merit, but politics. His name is Tyrese Miller. You need to see this. She hit send, and she prayed. By lunch, word had already spread. Kenny had overheard Mrs. Rollins talking to another teacher in the staff lounge and stormed off. Tyrese was at his locker when he noticed something was wrong. His books were missing, his notebooks, all torn and dumped across the hallway floor. But that wasn't the worst part. Scrawled across his locker in thick black marker, cheater. Under it, number sign garbage boy scam. Students snickered. A few took photos. Some even recorded TikToks. Yo, check it out, one kid said. Garbage boy faked his score. Probably just recycled someone else's answers. Tyrese didn't say a word. He just stood there, the weight of humiliation sinking deeper into his bones. Later that afternoon, he was called into the office. Mr. Delgado sat behind his desk with a fake frown. There's been an allegation, Tyrese, about your test score. Tyrese blinked. What allegation? That it was faked. Someone submitted test results using a ghost account. The board's launching an investigation. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending review. Tyrese felt like the ground fell out beneath him. But I took the test. I have proof. My laptop. Save it, Delgado snapped. You're off campus starting today. You'll be contacted. Tyrese walked out of the building with his backpack half-zipped and a heart full of fire and confusion. On the steps, Malcolm waited. He'd gotten a call from the school. He rushed toward his son. What the hell happened? They're saying I cheated. Malcolm's eyes darkened. That's a damn lie. Together, they went straight to the office. But when Malcolm tried to speak, Delgado didn't even look at him. You need to calm down. I am calm, Malcolm growled. But you're playing with my son's life, and I won't let it slide. Delgado crossed his arms. Mr. Miller, you're a janitor. Don't pretend like you understand how these processes work. Malcolm went quiet. His jaw tightened. The words hung in the air like poison. Outside, the parking lot was quiet. Malcolm stared at the ground as Tyrese slumped into the passenger seat. They don't see us, Malcolm said quietly. They see a broom, not a man, and they see your last name before they see your mind. Tyrese said nothing. He felt numb. At home, he unplugged his laptop and tucked it under the bed. Didn't touch his books. Barely ate. Online, the ridicule exploded. Garbage Boy scam was trending locally. Someone made a meme of him holding a trash can instead of a diploma. Even students who had never spoken to him were chiming in. He's always been weird. No way someone like him scored that high. Kenny uploaded a video with a smug grin. Some people try to skip the hard work and cheat their way to the top. Sad, really. Tyrese watched it all in silence. Something inside him cracked. That night, he stared at his reflection in the dark window. No dreams on the wall now. No plans. Just him and the silence. "I'm done," he whispered. The next morning, he told Malcolm, "I'm not going back." "You're suspended," Malcolm reminded him. "No, I mean after. I'm not going back at all. I'll get a job. Help you full time. School's not for people like us." Malcolm shook his head. "That's not who you are." Tyrese's voice rose. "Who I am? I'm a joke, Dad. They laugh at me in the hallways. They say I cheated, and the school believes them. No one's going to pick me over Kenny." Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Rollins, breathless, clutching her phone. "I got an email back," she said, eyes wide. "From the council." Tyrese looked up slowly. "They verified your login, timestamps, IP address, everything. And they sent back the official score breakdown." She paused, tears brimming in her eyes. "Tyrese, you didn't just score highest in the state. You're first in the entire nation." The room fell into stunned silence. What?" he whispered. "They said they've never seen a score that high. You're being formally invited to the National Scholar Gala, press interviews, college scouts, the whole thing." Tyrese stared at her, his hands shaking. "But the school can't stop it now. The council bypassed them. They're calling you directly. You're going, if you still want to." He sat down slowly, the weight of it all pressing down on his chest. Mrs. Rollins knelt in front of him. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Every homeroom classroom had the announcement playing live on the overhead screen. The National Scholar Council, in partnership with a major network, was unveiling the top scorer in the country. Most students barely paid attention until a familiar name appeared across the screen. "Top National Scholar, 2025, Tyrese Miller, Hamilton High School." A stunned silence gripped the hallways. Teachers gasped. Students froze. The same kids who had posted memes now blinked in disbelief. Then the camera cut to a pre-recorded segment. Tyrese, standing beside Mrs. Rollins in a modest blazer and borrowed tie, giving a quiet thank you speech. Behind them, the words, "Janitor's son scores first in the nation," scrolled across the bottom of the screen. And just like that, the school exploded. Reporters showed up outside the gates before third period. Local news vans parked along the curb. Cameras rolled as they hounded students for comments. Microphones were shoved into teachers' faces. "Did you know Tyrese Miller personally? Did he really study under street lamps? Is it true he was bullied for being a janitor's son?" The faculty was caught flat-footed. Mr. Delgado tried to control the damage, but it only got worse. A whistleblower email leaked from the district office, a thread showing Kenny's father had emailed Delgado weeks prior, strongly suggesting that Kenny remain the school's nominee, offering a thinly veiled donation in return. The screenshots spread like wildfire. By noon, the school board issued a statement. Mr. Delgado was placed on immediate administrative leave, pending full investigation. The district PR office did damage control, but the truth had rooted deep. The following morning, the school hosted an emergency assembly in the auditorium. Tyrese sat backstage, fidgeting with his sleeves, heart pounding. Mrs. Rollins gave him a reassuring smile. "You don't have to prove anything to them," she whispered. "You already did." From the wings, he could hear the buzz of a packed auditorium. Students, teachers, press, even Kenny, seated 2 rows back, pale and visibly shaken. Then the principal's interim replacement tapped the mic. "I'd like to welcome our National Scholar Champion, Mr. Tyrese Miller." The applause was hesitant at first. Then it grew. Tyrese stepped into the light. He blinked under the bright stage lamps and scanned the crowd. For a heartbeat, he saw them all as they were. Classmates who once mocked him, teachers who overlooked him, and cameras now trying to claim him. But in the third row, standing quietly, was his father. Malcolm, still in his janitor uniform, holding his cap against his chest. Tyrese stepped to the mic. "I never thought I'd be up here," he began softly. "Most of you didn't either." A few nervous chuckles. He swallowed. "Most of you called me garbage boy. You laughed when I picked up your lunch trays, when I stayed quiet, when I walked around with torn books. I guess I learned to stop looking up." He paused. "But every night when I got home, my dad, who wears this uniform with more pride than most men wear suits, told me I was brilliant. Even when I doubted myself, even when the lights were off, he said I wasn't trash, I was treasure. The room was still now. Tyrese's voice cracked. You all saw garbage. My father saw greatness. I believed him. A tear slipped down his cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. I didn't cheat. I didn't steal. I worked. I failed. I tried again. And I earned this. He looked out across the students, many now staring at their shoes. I'm not asking for applause. I'm asking you to look at people different, because you might be sitting next to the next national scholar, or the next doctor, or the next genius. You don't know. Silence. Then, slowly, awkwardly, hands began to clap. One by one more joined in. And then the room roared. From the crowd, Malcolm stared with glassy eyes. He didn't cheer. He just stood still, lips trembling, mouthing 3 words to himself. That's my son. Tyrese saw him, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind, not just for Tyrese, but for everyone whose life had brushed against his. MIT called first, not an email, a call, direct from the Office of Admissions. They'd seen the televised announcement, the speech, the viral clips of a janitor's son standing in front of a school that once mocked him. They offered Tyrese a full ride, tuition, housing, meals, a living stipend, and an invitation to their elite mentorship program for first-generation scholars. Tyrese didn't cry when they told him, but Malcolm did, right there in the living room, hand over his mouth, nodding through silent sobs as his son stared at the acceptance letter, still taped back together from the day it had been torn down. The story caught national attention. Talk shows wanted interviews. Educational foundations reached out with support. Even the school district, under fire and in full damage control mode, tried to spin it as a community triumph. But people remembered. They remembered who believed in him before the cameras rolled. Mrs. Rollins, for one, finally received the recognition she had long deserved. At the annual district gala, held in a downtown ballroom lined with school board members and city officials, Tyrese took the stage one final time, not as a victim, but as a victor. She saw me when no one else did, he said, looking out at the crowd. She didn't see a janitor's son. She saw a mind worth fighting for. Mrs. Rollins retired that summer, her legacy cemented not in plaques, but in the quiet revolution she ignited, one student at a time. Meanwhile, Malcolm received an unexpected offer from a private academy across town. They'd seen the clip of him mouthing, "That's my son," and were moved. They needed a facilities manager, someone with pride, work ethic, and grace. Malcolm accepted, though he still wore his uniform every day, pressed, clean, with the name Patch proudly stitched above his heart. Kenny, meanwhile, faced disciplinary action. His suspension was announced quietly, but the news still found its way out. His father's influence, once ironclad, began to crumble under public scrutiny. Donations dried up. Board members distanced themselves. The power they once held in the school faded, not through scandal, but silence. Still, Tyrese never gloated. When asked about Kenny in interviews, he always said the same thing. I don't hate him. I just hope he finds something real to stand on. The internet called it grace. The media called it maturity beyond his years. But for Tyrese, it was just clarity. He'd seen what bitterness did to people. He had no intention of letting it rot him from within. Before leaving for Boston, Tyrese launched a community tutoring initiative called From the Ground Up. It wasn't flashy. A few tables in a church basement, some donated books, and a handful of old laptops. But it filled up quickly. Kids from his old school came in droves. Kids who once ignored him, now eager to learn from him. He stayed in town long enough to run the first full month himself, training the next batch of volunteer tutors, including some of the very teachers who once looked past him. On his final day before heading to college, Tyrese walked the halls of Hamilton High one last time. No mockery followed him this time, just nods, smiles, and hushed words of respect. He stopped outside the janitor's closet, the same one where his father had once given him lunch wrapped in newspaper, and told him not to give up. The door was open. The cart was gone. Tyrese stood there a long moment, then pulled out a small plaque from his backpack. He hung it gently on the wall. From the ground up began here. Then he walked away, toward the future he'd built, not with privilege, not with pity, but with fire. The morning sun spilled gently through the window as Tyrese folded the last of his t-shirts into his suitcase. His room looked different now, not just tidier, but fuller, not with things, but meaning. Stacks of books lined the shelves, worn at the edges from long nights of study. Letters from younger students were taped to the walls, messages scrawled in different handwriting, each one thanking him for believing in them when no one else did. And in the center of his desk stood a framed headline from the Boston Chronicle: "Garbage Boy Becomes National Genius." Tyrese picked it up, stared at it for a moment, and smiled. Malcolm leaned on the doorway, arms crossed, eyes a little glassy. "Bus'll be here soon," he said quietly. Tyrese walked over and hugged him, a full, unashamed, arms-wrapped kind of hug. "I didn't do this alone," he said, voice thick. Malcolm's reply was soft but solid. "I know. I carried the garbage. You carried the dream." They stood there a beat longer, holding a silence that said more than words ever could. Outside, the rumble of the bus echoed through the street. Tyrese grabbed his bag, took one last look around the room that raised him, and stepped out the door. The whole neighborhood seemed to watch as he walked toward the curb. Some waved, some clapped, some just stood still, quiet and proud. He boarded the bus, found his seat, and pressed his forehead lightly against the window. As it began to pull away, a small voice rang out from the sidewalk. "Tyrese!" He turned. A little boy, no older than 7, was running barefoot after the bus, waving a notebook in the air. "When I grow up, I want to be just like you." Tyrese's face softened. He pressed his hand to the window, nodded, and smiled. Not with arrogance, not with pain, but with quiet, hard-earned victory. The bus turned the corner, and the neighborhood disappeared behind him. But the dream? That was just beginning. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.